everybody. Uh, gonna waiting a bit to go live here. Um, we are testing out a new show here on IndieVolt called IndieVolt Origin Story. And what Origin Story is a show where where the intention is to talk to creators about their entry into whatever it is they do. So be it filmmaking, making comics, whatever. We want to talk to them and find out about how they got into it and really have that kind of a one-on-one with them. I got so I figured there's nobody better to test it out on than myself first. Now we'll see how that works out because this is the first time, so there's going to be a lot of hiccups. There's going to be a lot of I think probably I'm gonna mess up a lot. I'm gonna try to keep everything chronologically correct, but if I don't, then forgive me. Yeah, so here we go. Welcome. I'm Varian Grant, and this is IndieVolt Origin Story. Hello, everybody. Varian Grant here. I wanted to do this show because I felt that so many times the creators are almost, if not more, fascinating than what it is they're creating. The filmmakers, the comic book creators that we have on the show. We've had a couple of musicians on the show that on IndieVolt that we really never get a chance to really talk about how they got into the industry that they're in. So we have this series now called IndieVolt Origin Story, where we try to, or the intention again is to cover people and their entry into their field. I already said that, so I'm saying it again because I got more listeners now. So, hi out there. My name is Varian Grant, and I am a comic book artist. I a comic book creator. I draw, I write, I publish, and I got my start drawing when I was like really young. It's gonna be pretty boring, but I used to be a big Alvin and the Chipmunks fan, and because of that, I would ask my aunt. At the time, they didn't make action figures for the Alvin and the Chipmunks, so I would ask my aunt to draw them for me, and she would draw them for me, and she would cut them out, and she let me play with them. So basically, I was playing with paper dolls. And then they made Shrinky Dinks, and if anybody doesn't remember what a Shrinky Dink is, they were these little like flimsy piece of paper you color on them, then you put them in the oven. They would shrink down to like little rigid statuettes, and you could place them and play with them. But I would make my own, and as paper usually does, paper gets torn, it tears, it breaks, and I would ask my aunt to make me a new one, a new set of chipmunks, especially if the design changed on the show at all, which it rarely did. But I mean, there was a slight design change. But anyway, one day she told me no. She said, I'm not going to draw those for you. You can draw them yourself. And she did. And she didn't draw them. So I had to draw them myself, and I did draw them. And I didn't like the way they looked, but I just kept doing it and kept drawing it over and over and over until I got satisfied with it. And you couldn't stop me at that point. I just kept drawing. Ended up just wanting to draw He-Man, Smurfs, Transformers, just anything I could get my hands on. Dennis the Menace, Conan, because my parents foolishly went and bought me a Conan book one of the old like reprints, and gosh, that was horrible. I don't know why they did that. They shouldn't have done that. But they bought me a Conan book, and it to see, I had not seen women drawn that way before. I hadn't seen men drawn that way before. I mean, and then that led to me, and I was like 4, so that led to me getting like you know He-Man and Superman, Batman books, and uh, becoming fascinated with those characters. My first comic actually was a Fantastic Four book, which I still have, Puppet Master, and I I love that book. I still have that same book, my first comic, and I don't know if a lot of people can say that they still have their first comic book. And then, I would go to school and just draw on everything, and the teacher would call my parents, and she would have them come down to the school. And I remember my mother says that she was walking the halls of my school, and she saw she was looking at portraits, and she'd seen a portrait of a tiger that she thought was really nice for that grade level. And she came into the class, and my teacher, Miss Gill, told her she wanted to show her something, and took her out there in the hallway and showed her that picture and said, "Your son drew that." And my mother thought, "Oh man, that's great," because she could paint herself. She something of an artist herself. So her and my father really just made sure that I had an art table from 5 to 6 years old. I just parted with that art table. I just got rid of the framework of that art table in 2019. Last year, I think it was. May have even been this year while cleaning out the garage. I just got rid of the framework of it, and it kind of hurt to do that because I had that tables for years. But my son got a chance to draw it too, so that was cool. It was kind of like a completion of the circle. The first comic I ever did was in a notebook, and a friend of mine, we would go to Borders Books, and they had these sketchbooks that were hardcover. They looked like they would be regular, like novel books, but they were just sketchbooks. And we developed this idea that hell, we'll draw our comics in these, and people will love them. And we didn't know what we were doing, and started our drawing in those books. And I think each book that I started, I must have started about 7 or 8 of them. Each book that I started, I never completed. I got about 10, 15 pages into each book, and then I'm like, oh, I got another story I want to tell. Hey, I need to go to Borders and buy another one of those books. And then I'd come back home and crank open that book and start drawing that story. And never finished a book in those first comics. But we were in school. So the first completed work I did was with a, this is where it gets kind of ghetto. I had began working for a guy who considered himself a writer. He was older than me by several years. If I was 13, he must have been 21, and he considered himself a writer. And he had a comic script that he wanted to do, and he asked me, could I draw the characters? And I did. I drew the characters for him, and he would give me the script, and it was all written. It was all, nothing was typed out. It was all in his notebooks, and he had several notebooks of just ideas and things about these characters. And we decided, my father had a copy machine in the basement because my father was a cable contractor at this point. He had left General Motors and started installing cable. So opened his own cable contracting service, and he had a copy machine in the basement. So me and Will would go down into the basement, and we'd make these copies. And I got about 4 pages in, and Will said, hey, let's sell it now. And Will would we take the pages, we fold them and staple them, and Will would take them out, and he'd go sell them. And not for much, like $2, $1 or $2, and they would just fold over pages. And that was, these issues, and they were really really small. And I didn't consider it published work. I didn't, and I guess I still don't consider it published work. But um, he, the thing about it was we got to about issue number 6, and it was a time hopping adventure. All these characters were pulled from different times, and they were all, they had to save the world, save the universe, because there was a guy who had a chrono crystal, and he was going through time, and he was getting all the bad guys together, and it was high concept for a 13-year-old. I'll tell you that. And then he stopped. He stopped doing the book. He didn't want to do it anymore. And unfortunately, you know, we had a bit of a fan base, and people wanted to see the book. They wanted to see it to completion, or at least they wanted it to be finished. And he stopped doing the book, but then decided he knew another artist that would take over, and they tried to do the book, and it was a mess. It was a complete mess, and yeah, that's how that ended. I actually he did come back about a year later and asked me to finish off the original series we did, and we did 2 issues after that, and nothing else. Nothing else. And we're still friends, but he's much older than I am, so I get to ridicule him about his actions. And then that's when and Randy will laugh about that. Randy will laugh about this, but that's when Michael Turner changed my life. I got a Worlds of Westfield's brochure in the mail, and I flipped over the magazine, and there was this picture of this woman, and she had this arm on her that was just like this gauntlet like arm of claws, and she was half naked. It was she had biggins, and I remember thinking, oh my god, I didn't want to draw again. There was no way I was going to be able to draw like this guy. And I'm looking through this book, and I keep seeing this name, Michael Turner cover, and I just became so smitten with his artwork. I did not want to draw like anybody except for him, and I was really heavily manga influenced at that point. And I'll show you guys, and you might think this is funny, and it is. It's kind of funny. I got some props set here because other people are going to ask about them. So this is one of my first sketchbooks. Well, not one of my first, but around the time that I discovered Mike Turner, and I wanted to draw so much like him that I was, I changed my style a lot to try to be as close to Mike Turner as I possibly could be in terms of, how my art looked, how things were set up. It's a logo actually, and I actually had that made. It's pretty cool. Yeah, that girl's not like 5 heads high. She's a munchkin. Look at her. She's but just trying to figure out proportions. This is a very early sketchbook. This is probably 98, 99. And then, I had empty pages left in it. So just things I would try to do. I mean, I changed my whole art style to be more like Mike Turner. And I have a lot of Mike Turner art around me. He definitely influenced what I wanted to do. And, I felt that I needed to do work that was comparable to his. If I was ever going to be happy with the type of content I was putting out, I wanted to make sure it looked like it could stand next to his and others and look like a worthy comic. So if you speed ahead a little bit, I had made the decision that I was going to make comics, and This was 2001. I was at this point jobless. I didn't have a job, and I had no idea how I was going to get into the comics medium. But I did have the forethought to do some research on the internet, and they recommended a couple different things that I could research, and I found a book and a DVD. Which it was weird because it was like one thing would lead you to another. It was almost like a pyramid scheme. Now that I think about it, maybe I'm still in it. Uh, maybe I'm still in this great pyramid scheme of comics because you'd read a book and it would say buy this DVD. You read this DVD, it would say buy this book series. You buy the book series, it says okay, now go to this show. You get a plane ticket, go to this show. It was rough, but I bought a DVD and I can't remember the name of it right now, but one of the things in that DVD, was get your portfolio together and go to Comic Cons. And I did that. I got my portfolio together and I went to Comic Cons and I started showing people my art. And people said I was decent. They just didn't have work for me. Now, keep in mind, I was going to smaller shows. I had no idea about the bigger shows yet. And we had there was no, like I didn't go to a show of Marvel where they were doing portfolio reviews. I didn't do any shows where DC was doing portfolio reviews, so I just, stayed. I started staying home and drawing more, and I would go to our local convention, which for me was Motor City Comic Con, and I bumped into a gentleman there by the name of Eric Hudson, who said, "Well," and then I told Eric what was going on. I said, I just didn't know him. I said, I got my portfolio and I was hoping to get some work. And he said to me, well, why don't you just do it yourself? Put your own book out. And I don't know why I hadn't thought about that. And I went home and I wanted to figure out how to put my own book out. I had no money. So I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I pawned my car. I pawned my car to get money to buy books about getting in the comic industry. I didn't pawn my car for much. I think I pawned it for about $450, way under its value, but it was mine. It was paid off. I had anything to worry about. But I went out and I bought some Byrne Hogarth art books and books about business and some books online specifically about the comic book industry and how to break in. And I read them all. Within 2 weeks, I kind of quarantined myself in the house. I didn't go out with friends. I just studied those books, and I began to live, eat, sleep, and crap the comic book business. And now some people say maybe even crap on the comic book business. And that was the start of my first company. Opened my first company in 2008. It's called Unlimited Psycho, and it was a series of errors. colossal errors, so much failure. I did not know what I was doing. There was a lot of people. There were a lot of people that told me I didn't know what I was doing, but there were also quite a number of people who took advantage of the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. And the first thing I went and did was I went and got an office, because no one would take me serious if I didn't have an office. I felt, and my first office was $225 a month. It was in Southfield, Michigan, and I was in that office for about 7 months. We'd actually outgrown it. We'd opened up a bullpen because the artists told me they liked the idea of working together. This was, a lie. They didn't. But I opened up a bullpen. It was in the same complex, but in a different building. And that particular facility it ended up costing me about $500 a month at that point because of the additional space we were leasing. So that gave me a 500 and something dollar, some odd dollar overhead every month to clear with no books coming out yet. Keep in mind, I had went out also and bought a lot of paper from Blue Line. I still have the receipt. I bought a lot of paper from Blue Line. It was delivered to the office. Uh, um, just so much stuff. I bought an office computer, a really big Xerox machine that we ended up leaving. It broke my heart. And then art chairs and art tables for the bullpen in Southfield. Uh, the problem is that the facility itself, we were getting complaints because we were young. We were 20, I think. At 26, I was already considered one of the oldest of the group, and we were just in there young and dumb, and we made lots of noise, and we're creative. So we're in there late night, and the landlord started having problems with us, and he kind of wanted us out of his building, and we had broke nothing. We hadn't done anything wrong, but it was just we weren't the right fit for what they wanted. They wanted us to be, quiet, and that's not the way artists are. We're, and unless our heads are down and we got our headphones on, we're drawing. We're not quiet. We throw stuff around the room and talk and laugh, and that's just the way it was. We ended up, I ended up moving us downtown Detroit to a building called the Globe Building, which maybe when I would download this video and put it back up, I'll put some pictures in. I may be able to pull a picture up if you guys are interested in seeing it. It was called the Globe Building, and it was in downtown Detroit on 4th Street and Brush. And it is still there. Well, I don't know if it's there anymore. It might not be there. Hell, for all I know, it could be a parking garage now. But it is it was one of our, yeah, there we go. All right, I'll bring it up for you guys so you guys take a look at it. We moved downtown Detroit into this building, and it was in my opinion some of the best times that we had. Of course it's not working, but it was 407 4th Street, and yeah, it won't let me show it to you guys for some reason. Now it's now called Bedrock Detroit now, but it was a very nice building, and I had my bullpen and everything inside of it, and inside of one office. So my office was there, the bullpen was there. It was great. We had a lot of fun in that building, but eventually, that building was more expensive. Every month, that building cost me $800 and some odd dollars a month to be in, and then foolishly, we also expanded because the company that was next door to us had moved out. So we moved into their space and we took over their space and had even more space. So it went from being 800 to about 12 to 1300 a month overhead, and we only had one comic out. There was no way we were gonna be able to cover that. And the landlord worked with us for a while until we just couldn't afford it anymore. And then I got sick. It was probably one of the worst times in my adult life that I can remember, because I didn't understand what was going on with me. Back when I was younger, around 17, 18, I started getting these painful boils, and they would hurt, and they would, I'd lay down for hours, and they'd start to come back, and they hurt really bad, and I could not get out of bed some days. It hurt to walk, depending on where they were at. These boils would come anywhere where it was dark, put it that way, and they hurt really bad. So we ended up, I got really upset because my body was felt like it was turning on me. I ended up finding out that the disease was called hidradenitis suppurativa, and it is a illness that, as far as I can understand it, my sweat glands don't work properly. So instead of those toxins and bacteria being released through sweat, they stay in and they come out in painful boils and whatnot. Um, I was laid up in bed for about, a month and just in pain constantly. Didn't want to do anything, and I quit. I quit everything. I gave up. I didn't want to do comics anymore. I had my heart broken twice because losing our office space, losing some friendships that I thought I was going to keep for a while. That type of thing sucked, and I think it was, you know you don't want to do it anymore. You just get tired of getting screwed over. So stopped making books, and I just kind of just did my thing. And being sick meant there wasn't much of a thing to do. Um, and then I met my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously, but I met my wife, and she would not let me quit. And much to her credit, she just would not let me give up on comics, and she forced me to do a book. She said, take all your aggravation out, take all your anger out in a story. And I had a story I wanted to tell, and I did. And that book was Catharsis. And Catharsis was the first book that I printed through my company, Last Call Comics. And people tend to think Last Call Comics means like, oh, we're gonna drink and have a good time, and I mean that's what it says there. But Last Call Comics actually has a deeper meaning behind it. It's because I figured it was my last call. It was gonna be my last publishing company that I was ever gonna try again, and this book came out of it. Catharsis is a very mature book. It's very mature in its immaturity. And it was the first book that I put out, the Last Call Comics, and I wrote and drew it all within 3 months. I wrote, drew, and inked it. My colorist Eugen, he did such a good job on this book. I still look at it, and I still find new stuff in it whenever I'm looking back through it. It's 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 one of the books that probably kept me in this industry. Um, so she would not allow me to quit. So we did that book. We put it out. New company. Unfortunately, I sent the book to the printer and it wasn't ready in time. So I had to do my first show without my book. My first show back without my book. If it would have been a week later, I would have had the book, but I didn't. So, and there were some naysayers. There were people, who I had, given them a shot. Well, he's at a show again. He doesn't have a book. And now I'm at shows all the time and they don't have books. So, funny how that works out, isn't it? And that sounded really snooty, but I don't care. The lessons I've learned in this business, oh man, I've learned so much. People always say contracts, and I will tell you a contract is only as good as a person's word anyway. I've had people totally try to go outside the contract when it suits them. Remember this, if you're ever going to be a publisher and you're dealing with somebody who's going to screw you over, people will hold you to a standard they will not hold themselves to. And you will find yourself at loggerheads with someone over the simplest little, hey, do you understand how this hurts me if I do this? And they don't care. They don't care. So many people get in this industry and they don't, they didn't pawn their car to get here. They did a book and they took a shortcut in. No disrespect to anybody who has been able to enjoy a shortcut. That's not a problem. I mean, if you have, great. But, there are people who take those shortcuts because They think that there's quick money in comics. There's a Netflix deal, there's a movie deal right around the corner, and they can get it. Um, that's one lessons I've learned, to make sure that those contracts are ironclad, and also understand that sometimes it's best to be quiet. Um, you have situations that happen where people will do you very badly. Don't reveal everything, and just wait. Especially if you have find yourself in a position where you have to go the legal route, you have to get lawyers. Just wait. Just wait it out, and then get your lawyer, and then make sure that you have all the information that you need first. And you know, if you have to go the legal route, then fine. You go that way, and you take care of business. Protect yourself in this business. There are a lot of people out there who they they don't mean well. There's a lot of opportunists out there, and they seek out young artists, young writers, young there's anybody who wants to come in this business, and they can make a quick buck off of you. Um, the lessons that I've learned, it's I've been told it's the modern publishing era. You know, there's not much money in books unless there's not much money in comics unless you're making a lot of money in comics. Uh, and I used to try to infect people with my enthusiasm for the business, and I've learned that that is a big no-no. Excite your fans, not your co-workers, not your associates. Try to get your fans excited. But there's not a lot of money in comics, to be honest. If you're not passionate about it, you won't last, because the money that comes is from when you've been in this industry for a while, and you're able to get something that works. That's how you discover it. That's how you find that money, that secret, stash of, hey, here's my fan base, and here they are. But if you're coming to comics and you're going to jump in for a year or two, you're probably going to be real sad. You're probably going to be disappointed. Not to say you shouldn't, but there's no quick money here. It's all it's a slow build, slow burn to millionaire status. What I guess I should end it with what I love about this industry. I used to think that, and I took this from somebody who's fallen out of favor with the industry lately, but I used to say that, he said that there's no other medium where you can go and meet the people who are responsible for the thing that you love almost monthly at Comic Cons. There's no other medium like that, and that is true. You can go to any Comic Con around the globe and meet people that have created this thing that you love. That's a bad thing too, because it has a lot of toxic possibilities. There's that whole thing, I never meet your heroes, and then there's some fans out there that they're pretty toxic people. But what I love about this industry is that I do get to get up every morning and go live in a fantasy world. Who gets to play pretend all day? Very few people. Very few people outside of an asylum get to play pretend all day and sit at a board and draw and think about, well, what if there were spaceships and aliens and monsters and ghosts? And we get to do that as artists and creators of comics. It's one of the coolest things in the world, in my opinion. So that's what keeps me coming back, no matter how upset I get, no matter how many times I threaten to quit. There is this idea that, I get to sit down and draw, which I love doing. And now I get to entertain people and live in this fun world where these characters can fly and, turn into green rage monsters and do all this other cool stuff. I get to live in that world. So that's why I love comics. That's why I love this industry. And I doubt that'll ever change. If it does, you guys will be the first one to know, because I'm pretty mouthy. Again, I want to thank you all for watching this first episode of my origin, or my origin story. I have been Varian Grant, and hopefully we'll have someone else on very soon who will be able to give you guys a bit more insight into their origin in their chosen field. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I have been Varian Grant. You have all been great. And I will see you all online or wherever you may be found. Most of you aren't found online, though. Most of you are found, in your homes at the moment. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you later.